Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The windshield didn't just break. It exploded into a constellation of diamonds, showering the dashboard with violence and rain. Gravity inverted, the world spun in a sickening lurch of metal screaming against asphalt, and then silence. A silence so heavy it felt like the crushing depth of the ocean. Julian Thorne tasted copper and gasoline. He hung upside down, the seatbelt biting into his hip like a jagged tooth, the blood rushing to his head, making his vision swim in red vignettes. Through the shattered gap where the window used to be, he saw him. Lucian, his boyfriend of 3 years. The man who had whispered promises of eternity just an hour ago. Lucian was standing outside in the pouring rain, his cashmere coat untouched by the mud, checking his wristwatch. He wasn't calling 911. He wasn't scrambling down the embankment to help. He was watching the wreckage with the dispassionate gaze of an auditor checking a ledger. Lucian, Julian croaked, the sound scraping his throat like sandpaper. Help me. Lucian stepped closer, his expensive Italian leather shoes crunching on the wet gravel. He crouched, his handsome face illuminated by a crack of lightning, revealing not panic, but a chilling resignation. I'm sorry, Julian, he said, his voice struggling to rise above the thunder. The merger with the Kaneshiro family requires a clean slate. My father, he found out about us. He offered me the CEO's seat, or disownment and death for both of us. If you die here, tragically, I become the grieving survivor. I keep the power. I keep my life. You rigged the brakes, Julian realized, a coldness spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the winter rain. I calculated the odds, Lucian replied, standing up and buttoning his coat. Goodbye, my love. It was the only way. With that, the love of his life turned his back and walked up the slope, disappearing into the storm, leaving Julian trapped in a steel coffin that had begun to hiss with the terrifying sound of igniting fuel. 3 years later, the grand ballroom of the Obsidian Hotel in Seoul was a cavern of gold leaf, crystal chandeliers, and the suffocating scent of old money. It was the night of the Apex Gala, the most exclusive business gathering in Asia, where billion-dollar deals were whispered over flutes of vintage champagne. Lucian Vance, the youngest CEO in the history of Vance Global, stood at the edge of the balcony, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. He was thinner now, his cheekbones sharper, his eyes holding a perpetual shadow that no amount of sleep could erase. He had everything he had killed for. The company was the most powerful conglomerate in the tech sector. His father was retired. The Kaneshiro merger had been a success. He was the king of the city, and he was utterly miserable. You look like a man waiting for an execution, not a celebration, a voice purred from his left. Lucian stiffened. It was Elias Sterling, a rival venture capitalist known for his predatory acquisitions. I'm simply bored, Sterling. Something you wouldn't understand, given how hard you have to work to keep your stock price afloat. Sterling laughed, a low, shark-like sound. Touché. But tonight isn't about me. Everyone is buzzing about the mystery investor from Europe, the head of Project Lazarus. Rumor has it, he's bought out 30% of your debt from the secondary market this morning. Lucian's grip on his glass tightened, threatening to shatter the crystal. That's impossible. My debt is secure. Is it? Sterling smirked, gesturing toward the grand staircase. Why don't you ask him yourself? The orchestra stopped abruptly. The heavy oak doors at the top of the stairs groaned open. A hush descended over the hundreds of guests, a silence as heavy as the one in the car 3 years ago. A man stepped onto the landing. He was tall, dressed in a suit of velvet so dark it seemed to absorb the light around him. He wore a high collar that obscured his neck, and his hair, once a soft brown, was now dyed a stark, wintry white. He walked with a cane, a sleek rod of ebony topped with a silver handle shaped like a phoenix. He moved with a limp, a rhythmic tap-step-tap that echoed through the silent hall. But it was the face that made Lucian's heart stop in his chest. One side of the face was the perfection Lucian remembered, the high brow, the soft lips. The other side, from the temple down to the jaw, was covered by an intricate, filigree mask made of white gold. It didn't hide the scars completely. It accentuated them, turning disfigurement into art. The man's eyes locked onto Lucian across the ballroom. They were cold. Dead. Julian. Lucian breathed, the name a ghost escaping his lips. The man descended the stairs, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. He didn't stop until he stood directly in front of Lucian. The air between them crackled, charged with a voltage high enough to kill. "Mr. Vance," the man said. His voice was deeper, rougher, lacking the musicality it once held. It was the voice of someone who had screamed until their vocal cords snapped. "I believe you're holding my drink." Lucian trembled, a reaction he hadn't felt since he was a child. "Julian, you're dead." "The car. It exploded." "Did it?" The man tilted his head. "Or did you just walk away too fast to check?" I waited for the report," Lucian stammered, his composure shattering. "They said, unrecognizable remains. Money buys many things, Lucian, including coroner reports. And new identities." Julian stepped closer, invading Lucian's personal space. The smell of smoke and expensive cologne wafted off him. "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Lucien Lacroix, CEO of Lazarus Holdings. And as of this morning, I am the majority shareholder of your debt." The room spun. "Why?" Lucian whispered. Julian leaned in, his lips brushing Lucian's ear. "Because I wanted to see the look on your face when you realized that the ghost you made has come back to haunt you. And unlike you, I don't leave things unfinished." The following weeks were a systematic dismantling of Lucian's life. It wasn't a war, it was a slaughter. Lazarus Holdings blocked Vance's global supply chains. They outbid them on crucial real estate. They leaked damning evidence of the previous board's embezzlement, evidence Lucian had buried. Every move Lucian made, Julian was there, 2 steps ahead, checkmating him with a bored expression behind that gold mask. It culminated on a rainy Tuesday, exactly 3 years and 1 month after the accident. Lucian sat in his office, the lights off, watching the rain streak the floor-to-ceiling windows. His stock had plummeted 40% in a week. The board was calling for his resignation. The Kaneshiro family had pulled out. He was ruined. The intercom buzzed. "Sir, Mr. Lacroix is here. He says he has an appointment." "Send him in," Lucian said, his voice hollow. The doors opened. Julian walked in, leaving the cane by the door. He didn't need it as much as he pretended. It was a prop, a reminder of Lucian's sin. He locked the door behind him. "You look tired, Lucian," Julian said, taking a seat on the leather sofa, crossing his legs elegantly. "What do you want, Julian?" Lucian spun his chair around. "You've destroyed the company. You've destroyed my reputation. My father had a stroke when the stock crashed. Is that enough? Is your bloodlust sated?" "Not yet," Julian said softly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick folder. He tossed it onto Lucian's desk. Lucian opened it. It was a contract. A personal asset seizure agreement. "You're bankrupt, Lucian. Your personal assets are frozen. You're facing prison time for the corporate negligence I exposed," Julian explained calmly. "Unless you sign this." Lucian scanned the document. His eyes widened. This transfers ownership of me to you, in a manner of speaking. You become my personal assistant. My property. You live where I tell you. You work when I tell you. In exchange, I pay off the debts, I settle the legal cases, and your father gets the best medical care money can buy. This is slavery, Lucian hissed. This is penance, Julian roared, slamming his hand on the armrest. The mask shifted slightly, revealing the angry, knotted burn scar beneath. "You left me to burn. I felt my skin melt, Lucian. I screamed your name until my throat bled, and all I saw was your taillights fading away." Lucian crumpled. The facade of the arrogant CEO finally broke. He fell to his knees, burying his face in his hands. "I had to," he sobbed. "My father. He had a sniper on the ridge. If I had tried to pull you out, he would have shot us both. I thought if I staged it, if I walked away, he would think you were dead. I called an ambulance anonymously the second I was out of range. I swear, Julian, I swear I didn't want you to die. I wanted to save you the only way I knew how." Silence stretched in the room, heavy and suffocating. Julian stood up and walked around the desk. He looked down at the weeping man who had once been his world. "A sniper. On the North Ridge," Lucian choked out. "He showed me the photos later. Scope crosshairs on your head while we were driving. I panicked. I rigged the crash to happen on the curve, hoping the airbags would save you. that you'd just be injured. But the fuel line ruptured. I didn't calculate that. Julian stared at him. The logic was twisted, sick, and undeniably something Lucian would do. He was always a man of probability, not emotion. He had tried to play chess with death and lost. It doesn't matter, Julian said, his voice dropping to a whisper. The anger was still there, but the hate had cooled into something sharper, more controlling. Intentions do not scrub away burns, Lucian. You made a choice. You chose power over trust. You chose to play God with my life instead of telling me the truth. Julian reached down, grabbing Lucian's chin, forcing him to look up. The gold mask glinted in the dim light. You failed to save me then. So now, I will save you. But on my terms. He pointed to the contract. Sign it. Lucian looked at the paper, then at Julian. He saw the darkness in Julian's eyes, a reflection of the abyss he himself had created. He realized, with a twisted sense of relief, that he didn't want to be the king anymore. He didn't want the control. He wanted the punishment. He wanted to belong to the only person who truly knew his sins. Lucian reached for the pen. His hand didn't shake. He signed his name in bold, black ink. Good, Julian said, snatching the paper away. He sat on the edge of the desk, looking down at Lucian, who remained kneeling. The first rule of your employment, Lucian, you do not look at me unless I give you permission. Lucian lowered his head, staring at the polished shoes of his new master. Yes, sir. Julian's hand drifted down, fingers tangling in Lucian's hair, pulling his head back, exposing his throat. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was possessive. You broke me, Lucian. You turned me into a monster. Now, you're going to spend the rest of your life feeding the monster you created. I will, Lucian whispered, a tear tracking down his cheek. I'll do anything. I know, Julian murmured, his thumb tracing the pulse in Lucian's neck. Because you still love me. And that is the cruelest joke of all. I don't need to chain you. Your guilt is the strongest cage in the world. Julian leaned down, his lips brushing against Lucian's, cold and hard. Welcome home, Lucian. And that is how the broken bird returned to cage the hawk. If you enjoyed seeing Julian claim his dead in flesh and blood, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, is revenge sweeter when you destroy your enemy or when you own them? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Sitting on the edge of a mahogany executive desk, wearing a dark velvet suit with high collar, white hair, half-face gold filigree mask covering burned scars, holding a contract, intense cold expression, dominant pose. Man 2. Kneeling on the floor between man 1's legs, looking up with tears and submission, wearing a disheveled expensive suit, black hair, handsome butt. Broken expression, background is a dimly lit luxury corporate office with rain streaking against floor-to-ceiling windows, dramatic moody lighting, shadows, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intricate details.